What is up, folks? Welcome back to the channel, your home for everything salary cap fantasy. I am Jim. Today, I wanted to bring my reactions to week 5, the big performances, the disappointments, and what it all means for your fantasy rosters going forward. If you're new here, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and if you have something to say, leave it down in the comments below. Let's jump right in. Let's start with the performances, the key performances for this week. And let's go into the running back position. We have Rico Dowdle this week that led all running backs in fantasy points. I mean, there's still a game to be played. So, as I'm recording this, and so I expect there to be some changes after we are done with that. But for the most part, Rico Dowdle is the guy leading everyone in fantasy points. Now we have Jonathan Taylor, we have Kyron Williams, Devontae Williams, and Krusky Merritt to lead the running backs. Those are your top 5 running backs in terms of fantasy performance. And then for the wide receivers, Emeka Egbuka, right? My African cousin, right? This guy has been spectacular, nothing short of excellence. I mean, if you drafted him, you are probably sitting pretty right now. Jamal Chase came back to life. I mean, if you traded away Chase because you were afraid over the past few weeks, I hope you didn't do so because he came back to life. I'm not expecting every game to be like this, but hey, you will take it, right? Given how that offense has looked. JSN also was in the top 5, rather. Jalen Waddle, buoyed by that really big play late in the game. Stephon Diggs had another really good game. Those are 2 games in a row now, right? So solid performances here. We cannot complain at all from what we saw from Diggs and the rest of these guys. From our tight end position, AJ Barner. I mean, this has been 2 weeks where he's got a touchdown. So make sure you keep your eye on him going forward. And then Jake Ferguson. I mean, I expected him to be productive this year. I know some of that has to do with CD Lamb being out, but that was a really good performance from Ferguson. Theo Johnson is the surprise on this list. It's been 2 weeks now where Jackson Dart is targeting him whenever they get to the end zone. So could be a sneaky waiver wire ad here. I mean, I'm sure everyone's and their grandma's going to try to pick him up. I don't know how sustainable this is, but given the targets, I expect there to be game in and game out performances that we can. So if you have a bye week coming up and you don't have a tight end, you can do worse than throwing him in there and see if he catches a touchdown. Sam Laporta and Darren Waller. I mean, I hope you guys picked up Waller and you had him on your IR spot and you are reaping the benefits now. From the QB position, CJ Stroud led all QBs. Well, there's still a game to be played, but thus far, CJ Stroud, Sam Darnold, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields. We know that Justin Fields always does good, even if the Jets are not as good as of a football team. He does spectacularly from a fantasy standpoint. So definitely a good game to be for Justin Fields here. And so let's jump into the team by team performances here and just see how each team did and then what that means for our fantasy teams going forward. I know I missed this last week, and since then, there's been a ton of injuries. We will address that as we go forward here. I'm struggling just like you all with injuries. I mean, every day I look, there's a top player going down. I think today we learned that Hampton is also going on. That means 4 games he's gone. So if you were a team who drafted maybe 2 running backs and Hampton was one of them, where do you turn now? Right. So you see that desperation coming in, and you have a lot of managers trying to take advantage of you. It pays to draft a deep roster, and so you can withstand some of the attrition we are currently witnessing in the NFL. No matter who they are, wide receivers, running backs, they are all going down equally. So let's jump into this here. We'll start with the Arizona Cardinals. We saw a relatively good game from, I will start with Marvin Harrison. It has been 2 games of solid performance for Harrison thus far. And we can't complain here, right? I mean, this is a guy, if you had him in the first few weeks, he was giving us shades of last year where he had me nervous, right? I had him in a couple of leagues and he just had me nervous that we were going to see a repeat of last year. That is not the case here. We've seen a solid week back to back. I mean, 11.8, you can sneeze at right now, given like how many players are down and given that we've approached bye weeks. So Harrison Jr., at least they are forcing the ball down to him. I think once Connor went down, I mean, someone had to step up and they just started throwing him the ball, sink or swim, and I think he's making plays. So you hope that this is something that's sustainable long term, that will continue to build that chemistry, he and Kyler Murray. But speaking of Kyler Murray, he went down in this game. I am not sure as to the severity of the injury, but something to keep your eye on, especially if you are in a super flex league. The surprise of this game is Michael Carter. This guy we picked up, hopefully you picked him up off waivers last week. When Trey Benson went down, we did not know who would step up in this backfield, right? You had Bam Knight, you had DeMarcado, right? He was the guy I actually went for. I spent a lot of fab on DeMarcado, hoping that he would be the guy, the next guy up, but no, it was Michael Carter. Make of that what you will, but a solid performance on the day. DeMarcado, I think, had a touchdown late that would have salvaged his day, but he dropped it before he entered the end zone. So again, just boneheaded play there. But I'll say if you haven't picked up Carter, go ahead and pick him up, especially with bye weeks here. I think he's gonna be a solid play through the bye weeks, right? Until you get Benson back, until you start to get some of the top running backs coming back. I don't know how that injury to Kyler affects this offense, but I trust Jacoby to be a professional quarterback and carry this team until the rest of the cavalry gets back. But yeah, that's another guy to keep your eye on if you are in a super flex league and Kyler is indeed out. Go and pick up Jacoby Brissett. But yes, so Michael Carter, Jacoby Brissett are guys to keep your eye on on this team, and hopefully Marvin Harrison's performance is something that's here to stay long term. Let's move on here. The Ravens, right? This is just a bad team right now, right? As I was watching this game, I heard a stat, and I may be wrong here in how I frame this, but I think the announcer was saying that there's roughly 60, let's just say roughly 60% of their salary cap is on injury, is injured right now or are not playing, right? So roughly 60% of these guys that occupy the salary cap are not playing right now. So think about that, right? So there's a lot of guys on the defensive side out, which is also hindering what we see from the offensive side here, right? Because they can't stop anyone. I mean, like CJ Stroud, who's been pedestrian thus far in the season, had a wonderful game against these Baltimore Ravens, right? So there's not much here to do right now. If you drafted Zay Flowers and Derrick Henry, I'll continue to play them and just hoping that they end up, especially Henry, he falls into the end zone. But besides Flowers and Henry, it could be anyone on a week to week basis. I really don't know who to trust there. So if you have Derrick Henry, I mean, at least you have a healthy player to throw into your running back position. It's not the best situation right now, but something that you can hopefully hang your hat on, that at least your top running back is not hurt, because he can always get one of those big performances and it'll buoy your week. But yeah, there's not much else to write about for this team. I'll say one of the things to keep your eye on. I mean, what I wrote down here is that you really can't trust anyone on this team right now. All the players are bad, but again, we've hit bye weeks, so you can be choosy. The bye weeks combined with the injuries that are happening right now. Okay, Let's move on here to our next team, and that is the Carolina Panthers. Rico Dowdle is basically the takeaway from this game, right? I play against him this week, and obviously, right, I play against him this week, and I had Chuba. I didn't get to pick up Dowdle during the draft, and so I had to pay the price for that this week. I mean, 30.1 fantasy points to lead the Carolina Panthers, to lead all running backs as I'm taping this. I mean, total yardage 234 and one touchdown. And then Bryce Young was serviceable. Again, if you hopefully you're not starting Bryce Young unless you are in a superflex league. And if you are starting him in a superflex league, 12 points you would take it. And obviously these are half PPR scoring. So just keep that in mind. A half PPR format scoring here. So that could look a little different in your respective leagues based on the format, but roughly 12 fantasy points, you will take that on a week like this where you had, I think, roughly 4 teams on a bye. T Mac continues to be productive. We haven't really seen a big game from him. He's been hovering between like that 10 fantasy points to 14 fantasy point range all season. But I definitely think there are better days ahead for T Mac. I mean, at least you have a healthy body. Xavier Leggett is a guy who had a touchdown. I drafted this guy a lot and I had to drop him. I just think you can't trust him. I'm still not spending fab on him for any reason whatsoever. I think once Jalen Coker gets back, those targets are going to Leggett and the rest of these guys will go to Coker. So if you have Coker on your waiver wire, go and pick him up. I think he's coming up IR this week, so it might be already too late to the party, but throw some fab on him. I think he will have something to say in this offense going forward. As far as Dowdle goes, I'll pick him up, right? I will not go too crazy if he's in your league. I'll pick him up. Or maybe go crazy, right? If you have a lot of fab, maybe spend your fab there because I'm terrified, right? Every time we look up, another running back is going on IR, another player is going on IR. So if you are in a deep league or you 12 teams and up and you need help, just pick him up, right? You never know. But I expect that when Chuba gets back, hopefully this coming week, that he goes back to normalcy, right? Like in terms of he's gonna have a role in this offense. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's gonna have this level of production. So I think this was a 1 week thing where he got all the production, and obviously the Miami Dolphins are like a Swiss cheese when it comes to run defense. The takeaway here is that Rico Dowdle will have a role in this offense going forward. He's a guy you might be able to throw into your flex for a bye week here and there. He might give you 7 to 8 points. If you're unlucky, 5 points. But yeah, go and pick up Dowdle. Keep an eye on Jalen Coker. The Cleveland Browns. The story here is Dylan Gabriel. I think Dylan Gabriel breathed life into all of our assets that we drafted high this season. David Njoku finally had a game, right? I mean, the tight end position, we are sucking wind right now. If you have like a serviceable tight end, you are happy. David Njoku finally saw some good production in this game. The story here is Quinshawn Judkins. He continues to perform in this for this team, right? He's the do it all. I can't believe when we drafted, like we were afraid to touch this guy. I mean, I knew the talent. I just didn't know how his legal situation would play out. And I think that played a huge role in how we drafted. And those who picked him up for a few dollars here and there at the end of drafts, you are probably sitting pretty right now. But yeah, excellent pickup. Judkins is basically running. You can see the juice, right? Like you can just see once he touches the ball, something happens. But again, the takeaway here is that Judkins continues to run wild. He's going to be the do it all for this team going forward. But, we saw the life from the rest of the crew here and expect that going forward. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to do just a good enough job to just get the ball out of your hands and get it to the playmakers. Let these guys make some plays. Like the adage goes, Rookie QB's best friend is the tight end. So I expect these tight ends to eat game in and game out. So you can start those guys with confidence going forward. In terms of waiver wire pickup for this team, I will probably pick up Simpson just as a backup to. I know Ford is playing a lot, but if something happens to Judkins or injury or anything of that nature, I think Simpson stands to benefit. So I still see him on waiver wires, especially in deep leagues, and I don't get it. So pick those guys up, or even Jerome Ford. Pick him up. Right now, you can't be too choosy. Just pick up some bodies, have them on your bench, and see what happens as we progress here. Let's move on to the Cowboys. One of the surprises of this season has been Javonte Williams, right? This has been a fantastic pickup if you did pick up Judkins. And you probably were like, yeah, I don't have any running back. I'll just throw some darts here and see what happens. I think Dak Prescott has played really well as well, right? If you ask me, he's been fantasy QB one this year. Maybe not from an overall fantasy standpoint, but like I think game in and game out, he's been super productive. And I think just that production has kind of buoyed this entire offense. Jake Ferguson is eating. I don't know who this guy, Ryan Flowney. I mean, out of nowhere, this guy had 124 yards, right? So again, there is going to be opportunities in this offense. Whoever's that second, third wide receiver is going to eat. I feel like right now it's going to Jake Ferguson. CeeDee Lamb is out. So when CeeDee Lamb gets back, we'll see some of this value from Pickens and Ferguson and these no-name players. Even Javonte, some of those opportunities go back to CeeDee Lamb. But for right now, Javonte has been spectacular, right? This is why I love salary cap leagues, because you draft a guy for $1 and he's on your bench and you have a full stack roster and this guy pans out. That's really what takes you over the edge. And so as injuries happen, you are set up better than most teams because you drafted a guy and he's sitting on your bench, and now you can throw him into your lineup and you are in a way better position than your counterparts. So let's move on to the next team, which is the Denver Broncos. Again, what we saw here was another decent game from Bo Nix, but I think based on where you drafted Bo Nix, if you were in a super flex league like one of mine, Bo Nix was a guy who was going as this fourth best QB this year. I think everyone was super excited about his rushing potential in that offense and Sean Payton. We just haven't seen that come to fruition yet. But again, that said, you would take roughly 18 fantasy points. He hasn't been the best based on where he was drafted. He hasn't produced at that rate. J.K. Dobbins, again, is one of those values that he was going at the end of salary cap drafts, just like Javonte Williams. This guy was going for $2, $3. And I think that's one of the big takeaways here, right? As you are in your drafts in the coming years, make sure those guys that nobody wants to draft are sitting there. If you have the opportunity, forego a kicker and draft them, put them on your bench, see how like the preseason plays out. And then if you can, someone probably gets hurt before the season starts, so you can just kind of throw them in your IR spot, and then you have RB1, RB2 on your roster, on your bench, right? And so that's what we got from J.K. Dobbins this week. He continues to produce this year. I'm super happy for the kid. The injuries have just taken a toll on him over the years, and it's just great to see him perform at this level. Courtland Sutton had another spectacular game. Remember James Franklin when he was a thing week 2 and everyone picked him up? I think there'll be ebb and flows in this offense in terms of who's our second wide receiver. This game, it was Evan Ingram, and one of the things I wrote down here is an Evan Ingram sighting, but don't get excited, right? Because I mean, we are at 5 games in the season now, and like I'm saying, next week it could be Troy Franklin for all we know, right? Last week we saw AJ Harvey come to life. He had a big game. I'm sure a lot of people rushed and put him in their lineups. This week, nowhere to be seen. The only people I would start in this offense are J.K. Dobbins, Courtland Sutton Obviously, Bo Nix, you have to, especially if you're in a super flex league. And as bye weeks hit here, I may take a chance on putting Harvey in your lineups because I think at any given game, he can go off a big one, right? Like a 50-yard or a 40-yard run, and then he's made your day. So those are the guys I will keep my eyes on here. But as bye weeks hit, and if you have no option whatsoever, or all your running backs are hurt, put him in there. Game in and game out, he will have the good performance. And I think as the season progresses, we'll see more and more involvement in this offense. But right now, we just can't trust him. Houston Texans. Like I said, big game for them. This is the biggest game for CJ Stroud. He hasn't performed up to par based on where we drafted him this season. I mean, we saw some of this slippage coming through last year, and I think the offensive line needs work this offseason. The Ravens are horrible right now, and so they all had a big game. Xavier Hutchinson had a big game. Nico Collins had a big game. Hutchinson, though, was what? 3 for 18 and 2 touchdowns. So that's not something you can trust going forward. So don't be rushing to the waiver wire to drop a lot of money on Hutchinson. There are plenty of mouths to feed in this offense. I think week in and week out, you will see a different performance. I don't expect them to perform at this rate. The only guys I can start here with any level of certainty is Nico Collins. And if you are really, really struggling at a running back position, Nick Chubb doesn't hurt. I know everyone rushed last week to pick up Woody Marks. He was like the darling of the waiver wire last week. I think he will have good games here and there, depending on the matchups. But I know Nick Chubb is going to give me, thus far this season, he's giving you anywhere between 8 and 10 fantasy points. So trust in Nick Chubb, right? Like, I mean, I will take the 10 points, the 8 points right now, as opposed to the 5 or 0 points that you may get from Woody Marks on a game-to-game basis. It's good to see some life in the Houston Texans here. It's good to see Nico Collins still producing for people. CJ Stroud, if you drafted him in a super flex league, that's 28, roughly 29 fantasy points for your team. Not too shabby. The rookie wide receivers we drafted, I don't really see, this is not like a breakout game. I wouldn't trust any of these guys going forward, even if I'm like, if I'm desperate on a bye week and there's absolutely no one on to play, then maybe I would put these guys in my roster, matchup depending, and see what happens. But right now, from a running back standpoint, it's a committee, but they played the Ravens. So we'll see if this carries over to the next game. The Colts have been the story of this season. No one expected them to play at the level they are playing at right now. It's a special season for them. Jonathan Taylor, my guy, 3 touchdowns. I mean, the yardage was like not there, but like the touchdowns just took him to the next level this game. Tyler Warren is a guy we knew had potential. He keeps performing in this offense. Josh Downs, citing, I think, with Pierce Owl and some of those other guys, I also saw Josh Downs citing. So Josh Downs, I think you can put in your roster week in and week out, given like the fact that we've approached bye weeks here and we've seen some injuries also happen. I think having Josh Downs in your roster doesn't hurt. I think there will be opportunities here for him to have big games coming up here. But I'll play all of my Colts as much as I can. I'll play Pittman, I'll play Warren, I'll play Taylor. And if you haven't picked up DJ Giddens yet as handcuffed to Taylor, you should go and do that, because at the rate that they are running him, they are just running him as much as they can. Don't want to say this, but it's always good to be prepared for when these things happen. We hope that he stays healthy all year, but if something happens to JT, we do have DJ Giddens as a pickup. So pick him up, put him on your bench, see what happens. But this isn't the offense you want a piece of right now. Los Angeles Rams, right? The Rams, again, this is the Thursday night game, I believe. Kyron Williams had another big game for this offense. He could have had an even bigger game if he didn't fumble on the 1-yard line. I'm sure you're all kicking yourself. He had just the layup right there and he fumbled the ball. But yeah, he's basically the do it everything for this offense, followed by Puka Nacua. I mean, Nacua is like, we know a guy that this guy is going to be fine. What a fantasy budget or draft position spend well? If you had a fantasy position in the top five this year and you drafted Puka, you're probably sitting really pretty right now. So, I mean, a lot of guys don't necessarily pan out in our top 10 always. That's why I love salary cap drafts, because it allows me to do my research and come in prepared. And so I can draft the players I want on my roster. Obviously, injuries happen and you cannot control those situations, but you want to make sure that if you are going to draft a guy that high or spend a significant portion of your salary cap budget on him, he's performing at the rate your team needs in order to take you to the championship. Devontae Adams has been serviceable. I mean, for where we drafted, 11 fantasy points. He's been solid this entire season, and I expect that to continue. I think he and Stafford are still getting on the same page. So I think you will see more and more connections as the season progresses. So Devontae Adams is a guy I would trade for. In fact, if you have an opportunity to pry him away from someone, say a struggling team, I'll go ahead and offer something and get him off that team, because I think as the season progresses, he is going to have he's going to have a better rapport with Matthew Stafford, and I expect to see overall better performance and better numbers for him. A guy you should be rushing to the waiver wire and picking up right now is Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell is not fancy. He's not going to get you a bunch of target. He's probably not a PPR darling, but what he's going to give you is a solid fantasy floor every week. I think he might have a big play every week, right? It may not be like but like maybe every other week there will be a big play to be had, because he's the speedster in the offense, and when they need a big play, they go to him. I mean, he almost got a touchdown in the end zone there on that game. So go ahead and pick up when you are putting in your waiver budgets this week. Make sure you add a little something on him if you have the space, especially with all the injuries happening in the bye weeks here. You can't have too much of this offense. A guy that will also be on my bench is Blake Corum, just in case something happens to Kyrie. I'm like terrified right now based on the injuries that are happening. I have to have backups for most of my players now, so I'm probably going to spend this week going through the waiver wire. If there's a backup of any of my players on the waiver, I would try to add them, especially now that I have the space given the injuries that are just hitting my team left and right. But that said, my teams have been really good this year because I have depth, right? A guy that was sitting on my bench is Ramondre Stevenson, for example. A guy that's sitting on my bench is Wan'Dale Robinson, for example. So like I can definitely go and drop those guys in there. I think as he gains familiarity with the offense and his weapons, he will start to go to those guys a lot more. So it pays to draft a deep team and not spend all your money on the top two players here. So imagine this for the teams in the draft who spent all of their salary cap budget on, say, a top player or two, right? Yeah, if one of those guys went down, I was in leagues where Hampton was going for close to $60, $70, right? That's a huge chunk of your budget right there. Now he's out for 4 games. How much is your team positioned to weather the storm during those 4 games till he gets back? It's Tyreek Hill, right? Tyreek Hill went reasonably this year. So, I mean, he was going mostly in the $20 range. So, not too bad. But let's keep rolling here. All of this is to say that it pays to draft a deeper team, and this is when you start to reap the benefits of it. The Raiders are one of those teams that are terrible right now. I think that offense is holding back Genty. Brock Bowers is also hurt, and so like I think that is really affecting the overall performance here of everyone, right? And the teams are bracketing him. He's not moving at the same pace he was last year. Teams are bracketing him. That's affecting Gino and the rest of the players here. A guy that's been like a really shiny star in that offense has been Trey Tucker. I mean, you're not going to get big games every game. He reminds me of Tutu Atwell. You're going to get 2 explosives per game, and that should be good enough to set your team up for success, especially during the bye weeks, especially with the injuries, because all he needs is one big play to make his day, right? he's liable for one of those, especially with the fact that I think Brock Bowers might be out or he may be week to week, which doesn't sound good. Pick up Trey Tucker if he's on your waiver wire. Brock Bowers, I don't know. Maybe he comes back and recaptures what some of the stuff we saw from him last year, but I don't expect too much from him this season. If he can get healthy, maybe he can salvage your season. So if you can pair Brock Bowers with someone and go get a really solid player because someone's just like there's a Raider fan in every league, go get him. Or maybe a Bowers fan, go get him, right? I don't know what that trade will look like, but that's a trade I'll make if you had Brock Bowers. I didn't have any shares of Brock Bowers this year because he was too expensive for me. He was just going out of my price range. I'd rather spend this money on running back because that position is really thin. All right, guys, let's move on here to the Dolphins. Last week, we had the injury to Tyreek Hill. You'd never want injuries from any of your key players on your team. Unfortunately, injuries happen in the NFL. If you were one of the people who drafted Jalen Waddle, like I just have way too many shares of Waddle, not because I was expecting Hill to get hurt. I actually expected Hill to get traded, right? That's what I was hoping for. He gets traded and opens up this offense to Waddle. But I didn't factor in Darren Waller being a big piece in here as well. So the takeaways here is that 2 weeks in a row, Darren Waller has been serviceable, 16 fantasy points. And the week before, he was also, again, he just blew up here. And I'm hoping that when they get into the end zone, he's just a mismatch down there. So they're going to keep going to him in the end zone. So if Bowers is anywhere near your waiver wire, he should be off like ASAP. I'll go ahead and drop some buku dollars on Darren Waller. Make sure you have him on your team. You want a piece of that offense right now. He might be on a week-to-week basis. It might be the second leading pass catcher. We have Devon Achane, who's basically de facto wide receiver number 2. Yeah, he catches a lot of passes. He continues to produce. All we hope is that he can stay healthy, but he will keep doing his thing. Tua had like a really good game here again. So yeah, overall the Dolphins are showing signs of life, and that is helping our fantasy teams here. So I drafted Tua in some of my super flex leagues, and I'm benefiting from that now with the injuries. With the injuries going on, I've had like guys like Brock Purdy out, and I can just throw Tua into my other position and have him give me some fantasy points there. But takeaway here is Waddle and Waller will continue to shine in this offense. The three people you want in this offense right now are Waddle, Waller, and Devon Achane. I didn't think he would be such a huge part of his offense out the gate when he came back, but he seems to be he's eating up targets. So yeah, he might just have taken over that role that like I had earmarked for Malik Washington. So still pick up Washington. You never know what happens. Could be a bye week filler or something like that. They're doing all they can to get him involved in the offense here. But yeah, start Waller and Waddle with confidence going forward. I think you will reap the benefits. The Vikings had that game in Europe. I think this is the second game back to back in London. Jefferson had another big game. They are moving Jefferson all over the field. So he's giving you good enough production, right? Like, again, this is one of the guys that are returning some value on their fantasy draft spot. Justin Jefferson is just nothing to sneeze at. He's just another big game here. Carson Wentz has been serviceable, especially if you picked him up in a super flex league. He's filling in that void for guys that are hurt, like Joe Burrow or Brock Purdy or JJ McCarthy. I don't know how hurt McCarthy is right now. I think if they keep winning, Wentz is going to continue playing, right? He's just a professional quarterback, and I think Kevin O'Connor likes those guys that have played a lot of football. They've seen a lot of things, and I think, again, McCarthy might be holding the board again for the rest of the season and getting healthy. I just think he has a lot of football to learn. He can play, but like I think the more he observes, the better he becomes for future years. They don't need to rush him. He's still young. He can learn from these veteran guys, let them take the beating, and he can just learn. And hopefully, when he gets in there long term, he's like your Mahomes, where he's ready to go and he's seasoned and he's learned from the best. Jordan Addison has been a guy that I drafted a lot again, and I'm starting to reap the benefits here. It's been 2 weeks. I know he's not getting a lot of targets, but he's getting good enough fantasy production. I mean, 12 fantasy points here last week. I think it was something 13, 14 or something like that, right? He's not getting a lot of targets, but whenever they need him, he's delivering and giving you those big plays down the field. Jordan Mason continues to lead his team in rushes, but he's fumbling now, right? He's fumbled the past 2 weeks. I don't like the trajectory of this. We were all saying, okay, Aaron Jones is old and Aaron Jones is going to be out of here. And that's why we all drafted Jordan Mason really high. He's returned value for where we drafted him. But at the same time, you can't keep fumbling the ball, man. I think once Aaron Jones comes back, this is going to be a committee again. And if he fumbles, he's off the field, right? They're just going to roll with Aaron Jones. So Jordan Mason is a guy I'm a little shaky on right now. And if you can trade him, I would try to pair him with someone and get a good piece, right? Because people are desperate for running backs right now. Trade Jordan Mason if you can't and you need running backs to roll with him. But I think once Aaron Jones comes back, his role diminishes, right? Especially with the fact that he's been fumbling. Josh Oliver is nothing to see here. I think it was just like that one play they had earmarked for him. So nothing to see here. But if you can trade for Aaron Jones for cheap, I would do it because Mason is starting to scare me, man, with just like the fumble issues and stuff like that. He's a good running back. Don't get me wrong. In our offense, he should be good, but like you can't keep fumbling the ball because I feel like coaches hate that so much that like even if you are the most talented guy and you keep giving the football away, they're just gonna put in someone else. That's why when he fumbled out the last game, they just put in Xavier Scott. Scott ran like a whole series, right? Where Mason was sitting down. Maybe don't go trading any good piece for Aaron Jones here just to say that when Aaron Jones comes back, he's going to demand a portion of that backfield. Even if they're riding Jordan Mason heavily, Aaron Jones is still going to factor in here, right? And if you are desperate for a running back, go get Aaron Jones because they're going to use him in the pass game as well. The New Orleans Saints. This was the game we were hoping the Saints will win, right? I mean, the Giants are good, but like they're not that good. Rashid Shaheed was the story of this game, and that's because he just had like one big play, I think 80 plus yard touchdown. Other than that, his week would have been a little more pedestrian, but again, we can't take those opportunities out of his production, right? You can expect this week in and week out from Shaheed. They were also playing the Giants. The guy that keeps surprising me here is Spencer Rattler. I picked up Rattler for a lot of my Superflex leagues. And now that we are hitting all the injuries and like the bye weeks is here, this guy has been serviceable, what, 15, roughly 16 fantasy points. You'll take that any day for where I drafted him, right? Like at the end of the draft, I said, let me just throw a dart throw here. He's experienced. They might roll with him for this year. And that's all we need, right? Chris Olave is serviceable. Alvin Kamara has been quiet this year as all get out. And I think those targets that went to Kamara in previous years is now going to Chris Olave. So Kamara is a guy you may want to trade, right? Or hold on to for whatever, like however you feel about it. Either he's going to get traded to a better team and you're going to reap the benefits, or have Kendrick Miller, right? Either way, like he's not being utilized on this team. And I think he just has a lot more opportunities to produce for our teams. 55 total yardage for Kamara, right? Like 55 total, 28 passing, 28 rushing. That's not what we typically see from Kamara, right? They are also featuring Kendrick Miller a lot more here. So that is eating into what we expect from Kamara. And like the offense is just not potent. So when they play good defenses, that also is going to drain some of like that fantasy value we see. So think about how you want to handle the Kamara situation. Either you're going to trade him away, get some value right now, or you're going to keep him. I think he ends up on another team. The teams that are desperate for running back help right now are like the Chiefs, The Bears, my Bears, unfortunately, we could use some help with a guy like Kamara. Imagine Kamara and Ben Johnson and Caleb in Chicago. Imagine that. He's a better version than what. That's how much I remember my running back. Let's move on here to the next team, the New York Giants. Dart has been the story of this team the past few weeks. He's figuring it out on the fly. He's not spectacular by any means, but he's not turning the football over at an alarming rate. 2 interceptions here. You expect that from a rookie QB, but he's also giving you enough value on the other side that you're not worried too much about the 2 turnovers. I think the turnovers will clean those up as he goes. Right now, he's just chugging it, man. He's just trying to make plays, and I think some of that happens when you are learning. But a guy that he keeps hitting in the end zone is T.O. Johnson. T.O. Johnson is a guy from Penn State. Drafted him last year or the year before. I want to say he's been on this offense. He's good friends with Dart. I was expecting Wan'Dale Robinson to see an uptake in performance here. When they get into the end zone, we are seeing that those targets are going to Theo Johnson. So go and pick up Theo Johnson or waiver wire, put in a good, hefty bid for him. Again, a young QB's best friend is a tight end. They're using our tight end, so there's value to be had here. We don't know how, with neighbors out, how the rest of the volume in this offense is going to be distributed long term. So guys you want to have are guys like Scatterbo is playing a role in the passing game. I mean, this game wasn't spectacular running. 59 yards. He made some hay in the pass game, 6 for 45. Tracy's coming back. Tyron Tracy's coming back. He's a former wide receiver converted into running back, so they're definitely going to use him. But I think the theme here is that the Giants are using the tight ends. We saw that with like Bellinger here getting 7 fantasy points and then Theo Johnson getting roughly 18 fantasy points. So they're going to definitely lean on a tight end position when they get into the end zone. And all you need is 1 touchdowns from a tight end and your day is made, right? That is it. Go pick up Theo Johnson. Yeah. And I expect this to be a committee once Tyron Tracy comes back. He's also going to factor into the pass game. Dart is running, he's passing. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot of opportunities to be had in this offense. But yeah, if you were one of the people who lost neighbors, just a tough blow overall. We were finally happy that Russell Wilson was like being benched, and we were excited for Dart to come in and see what he could do. If nothing else, he was going to chuck the ball to neighbors consistently, right? And we were super happy about the fantasy opportunities there. Unfortunately, that happened last week. I didn't record this last week, so I didn't have a chance to talk through it. So we're handling that now. But yeah, I will keep my eye on Wan'Dale Robinson. I think with time, he will build our rapport with Dart, and we will start to see some performance from him here. But yeah, for now, go pick up Theo Johnson. The New York Jets. The Jets are horrible as a football team. I can say that a bunch of my friends are Jet fans. We all, grew up in Jets country in this area. But one thing you cannot sneeze at from a Justin Fields led offense is fantasy production. We don't care here if they are the best team or the worst team. We just care if they produce fantasy points for our team. Justin Fields has been spectacular this season. Another 26 fantasy points this game. Most of the production was garbage time, but who cares? You would take it. Garrett Wilson continues to eat, right? Again, 16 fantasy points. They continue to target him. Brees Hall had a really solid game. Again, we lost Braylon Allen last week on this team. Brees Hall is a guy that they ran and they ran and they ran in this game. They also used him in the pass game for a total of 155 yards. I think Brees Hall is a candidate to also get traded this year if you can. He's a guy you might be able to pick up lower right now. Say he goes to Chicago, he automatically becomes the best running back in that backfield. I think there's an opportunity that Brees Hall gets moved this year. A guy that I keep my eye on is Isaiah Davis. He's the second running back in this offense. Have him stashed somewhere on your bench. And then lastly, he had Mason Taylor, right? Mason Taylor is basically the de facto second wide receiver, a second pass catcher in this offense behind Garrett Wilson, 9 for 67. If you're in a 4 PPR league, that's monster for you right there, right? Like this is half PPR and it's 13 fantasy points. Go and pick up Mason Taylor if you haven't already. I play in a bunch of leagues where he's not there. Just go and pick him up if he's on your waiver wire draft. Drop a hefty penny. Hopefully you haven't blown your entire fab up to this point. You still have some money tucked away for these type of opportunities. Let's move on here to the Eagles. The Eagles finally lost a game, right? I felt like this team was sleepwalking out of the gate, right? They were just like, we're just going to run the ball. We know we can run the ball. So we're just going to run the ball until we can't run it anymore. We saw that they were forced to pass the ball last week. They did. We saw those guys eat A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. This week, again, they were forced to get out of that run heavy script. We saw some productions from this guy. A.J. Brown continues to be up and down. Devontae's gotten a little bit more production. I think a little ebb and flow week to week. You're starting to hear like the squeaky wheel situation and people complaining that they're not being a part of like the winning and the game plan. But Jalen Hurts has been quiet this year. Only 19 fantasy point in this game, in this one. If you drafted this guy in a Superflex league or as one of the top 4 QBs, I don't. He hasn't returned the level of value that you drafted him for. He's not rushing a lot, especially in this one. He didn't rush a lot, 3 yards. The reason why you go get a Jalen Hurts is because he will give you at least 50 plus yardage every game in a rushing touchdown. Maybe he did in this one. I don't necessarily recall the rushing touchdown, but either way, Saquon Barkley got one of his touchdowns. It was a big play. I think it may have been over 40 yards, right? But Saquon came to life in this one. Good enough production. He had 30 yards. It was going to be another bad week, and he caught that long touchdown, and I think that salvaged his week. Devontae Smith, 15 fantasy points. Everywhere I look, he was making big plays, making big catches late in that game. So a really good production from Smith here. I saw him in this one because I was like, I can't trust the Eagles going forward. I don't know when to put these guys in my lineup and when not to put them in my lineup. And there are leagues where I drafted well, right? And so I have other options that I can afford to have Smith on my bench in a 14-team league with like roughly 19 roster spots, right? So yeah, you're asking me who I benched him for. I can tell you right now, probably some scrub that I thought I should have put in my lineup, but all is well that ends well as long as I win the week. That's all I care about. But hopefully this is a wake-up call for the Eagles. Hopefully they start to get back in gear. We are approaching what used to be the halfway mark of the season, right? 12 games. But I mean, yes, this team has to start thinking about how they want to play football. I think they just thought they were going to run the ball to the next Super Bowl and then like play from there. They feel like a very sluggish team right now. So I think hopefully they will get back to their old ways of opening up this offense a little more, chugging the ball down for you a little more than what we've seen from them thus far. So I would say stay patient, but if you can't, maybe this is a buy low opportunity for AJ Brown, right? I mean, go and get him because some manager is probably frustrated. If you're 0-4 or you are 1-4 or something like that, and you're the running back you're relying on, the wide receiver you're relying on the most is AJ Brown. I mean, you might be willing to take pennies on the dollar right now. If you were 4-0, 3-1 after this week, or whatever the record's going to be after this one, go and see if you can pry away AJ Brown because I'm sure some managers going to be frustrated. But I see the Eagles; they can't continue to play like this all season long. I see them opening up this offense. I see them feeding AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Okay, guys, let us move on to the next one here. The Niners was the second half of the Thursday night game. CMC, obviously, there's not much to see here. This guy has been tremendous when he's healthy, continues to perform. He continues to play a huge role in the passing game, especially in the one where we had Ricky, we have Juwan Jennings, and we had Kendrick Bourne as the leading wide receiver in this offense. Kendrick Bourne was eating. What, 10 for 142. Everywhere I turned, he was catching a pass here. Just that rapport with Mac Jones. And then you have like Kyle Shanahan just scheming him open. A really great game from Kendrick Bourne. I'll say pick him up because you never know with the injuries, the way we are getting them now. It could be anything from, hey, this guy was active this week. Now he was injured, hurt this week. He was out. Now he's on IR for the next 4 weeks. So go and pick up Kendrick Bourne. I wouldn't spend too much of my fab on him just yet because my hope is that Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings are back for this week. Also, George Kittle is coming back. So don't spend all your fab on Kendrick Bourne because he's just going to go back to his backup status. This offense is going to flow through Christian McCaffrey and Josh Kittle when he gets back. And then you have your Ricky Pearsall and your Juwan Jennings to really open things up in this offense, right? I expect Brock Purdy to be back this week as well. Mac Jones had a fantastic game, but dude, like every time I turned around, this guy was being dragged off the field. He got beat up in this game. The fact that he was still standing in there making plays just goes to show you how tough these guys are. Like this guy was being beat up at one point. I think he was even throwing up on the sidelines, if I'm not mistaken, right? But he had a fantastic game. If you played Kendrick Bourne in this game, you probably, had a pretty good week to get started. Here, I know a lot changed with the subsequent games, but it was a good start. I played Demarcus Robinson, hoping he'll have the Kendrick Bourne game, and yeah, 5.4 fantasy points. But hey, I'll take it on a slow week. I didn't have anyone else to throw in one of my 14 team super flex leagues, 21 roster spots. I just threw him up there. You can't complain too much. All right, guys, let's move on to the next one. Go pick up Kendrick Bourne, but do not spend a ton of fab, right? Don't spend a big portion of your fab. The guys I'll be spending my fab on this week are guys like Michael Carter, guys like Rico Dowdle, guys like the Chargers running backs, and whoever is going to be in that backfield. You throw some money at them, see what shakes out. Right? Those are the guys I'm going to spend my heavy fab on. For the Niners, Kittle is going to be back. Pearsall is coming back. Juwan Jennings is also going to be back. So I think you should be good you should go back to your regular scheduled programming. Let's go to the Seahawks here. Again, Sam Darnold has another spectacular game. I mean, if you have him in a super flex league, this was a really good game for you. I think in previous games, he's been around like the 14, 15 fantasy point game range here. But this was a shootout with the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield is not going to take it easy when it comes to slinging the rock. JSN had another big game, 132 and 1 touchdown. AJ Barner is a guy who continues to show out. He had another really good game last week. I think they are looking for production elsewhere. Right now, Cooper Kupp is a guy who you just can't rely on. Given where he was drafted around like the Michael Pittmans of the world. We're just seeing a better performance around him as opposed to him having those performances. So, like I told you weeks ago, pick up Torrey Horton, have him on your bench. Now, AJ Barner is a guy that I will also recommend you go and pick up, given how thin tight end is. I don't expect him to have this big of a performance every week, but if he's giving you a touchdown every other week, you'll be happy with it. In this one, he had 7 for 52. Maybe it's just a matchup, but he's done it 2 weeks in a row now. So I'm starting to take notice. Add him to your roster if you can. Don't spend all your fab on him unless you are desperate for tight end help. Torrey Horton will be hit or miss. There'll be good games, there'll be bad games. But I think long term, he has an opportunity to really thrive in this offense. I am so upset at like the Seahawks and the coaching staff for how they are just this backfield. You clearly know that Ken Walker. You can clearly see that Ken Walker is the most explosive runner. He's the best runner in this offense by none. Whenever he touches the ball, amazing things happen. They just keep vulturing his touchdown opportunities when they get into the goal line. They're giving it to Charbonnet. So hey, It's going to be a committee until further notice. Right now, you just play both guys and you hope to give you production here. I think the touchdown salvage shopping his day, but he's being productive in that offense, right? They trust him around the goal line. And right now, Ken Walker is just like in between, big play guy. They're not really giving him a lot of touchdown opportunities. So maybe that changes here as the season progresses. Ken Walker is also another candidate to be traded. Imagine Ken Walker in Chicago or in Kansas City. There's an opportunity here for these guys to move on to better pastures. I'm thinking Ken Walker, I'm thinking Brees Hall, I'm thinking Alvin Kamara. Those are all guys that you should keep your eye on here. I think there will be some trades at the deadline, and that can influence where some of these guys go. Because right now, Ken Walker is not being, they're not maximizing him to his fullest potential. I peg this guy should be like one of the top running backs in the league. That's how we drafted him. The coaches don't see it that way. They want to have a committee, and that is burning us all who have lots of shares of Ken Walker. It leaves me wanting more every week. But that's it for the ones, guys. I don't. Cooper Cup will have better days. He'll have good games here and there. But for all intents and purposes, I expect the running backs in this offense and JSN to be the guys in this offense. Maybe the tight end position. Horton is going to have some good games. We're not going to know when it's going to come. But yeah, that's how to navigate the Seahawks. Hopefully, there are better days for Ken Walker because I don't like this stuff that's going on. Let's go to the Buffalo Bills. This was a Josh Allen game, but the Patriots played them really well, right? The Patriots took the fight to them in this game. So, yeah, we didn't see the same level of production we're accustomed to seeing from the rest of the Bills here. This was just a slow game for James Cook overall. He just didn't have like the performance we are accustomed to thus far this season. He's been carrying most. He's been one of the most consistent running backs. He's been carrying our teams thus far throughout the season. I think he will bounce back. In terms of beyond James Cook and Josh Allen, the only other players you can really trust in this offense is Dalton Kincaid, essentially, and maybe Khalil Shakir. Kincaid had another solid game. I mean, given the tight end position, I keep saying this, any production you get is good production at this point. He's been averaging at least over 10 fantasy points a game. So another solid outing here. No one else to speak of in this passing game. Maybe you can start Shakir, right? That's maybe the only person you can start going forward. Keon Coleman also shows some life in this game. But beyond that, I really don't know who else to trust in this game, right? In this on this team in terms of like the pass game. So keep your eye on that offense and how it unfolds. But I think long term it's going to be James Cook. It's going to be Dalton Kincaid, maybe Shakir, and then Josh Allen are the only players you can really trust in this offense. Let's move on to the Detroit Lions. Again, this was another cupcake of a matchup for the Lions. I believe this was the Cincinnati Bengals visiting. That Bengals team just is horrible right now. So you knew the Lions were going to eat. Jared Goff, 20 fantasy points, 3 touchdowns. David Montgomery had a good game, roughly 18 fantasy points. Same with Sam Laporta. David Montgomery had what? 2 touchdowns. Did he throw a touchdown in this game? Yes, I think he threw a touchdown in this game as well. So a really big day for David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs also had another big day. 2 for 33 in the pass game, 54 rushing. Amon-Ra, 100 yards receiving. The only person who continues to struggle in this offense is Jameson Williams. I don't know what the plan is for him, but we cannot, with this team playing the way they are playing currently, we cannot have Jameson Williams in our lineups, right? Don't trust him. Don't put him there. I know when he has those games, they are going to be massive, right? They're going to catapult your team for that week. But for right now, if you've been playing him for four, while we're going week five now, and he's had one solid game, how much can you trust, right? I'm 0-5 in one of my leagues, in my ESPN league, right? At this point, I can't play him anymore because I'm struggling. I'm trying to put anyone with life in there, right? He may have a big game, but I can't count on that right now. So he will have to sit until he shows me string of productions before he can go back in my lineup. I think the focus of this offense is right here on this screen. It's going to be David Montgomery from game to game, Jameer Gibbs, and then Amar Ross and Brown. You will have a Sam Laporta game sprinkled in there, but that is the core of this offense right now, right? Things may change down the road, but for right now, we cannot trust Jameson Williams. Let's move on to the Chargers here. The Chargers had another horrible day in terms of just actual football. Dude, they're just everyone's hurt. Like it started with the offensive line. I think Harbaugh just like beat those guys into the ground. We had injuries on the offensive line. Now we've lost Omarion Hampton for at least 4 weeks. He was in a walking boot, and then we got the news today that he is going to be out for the next 4 weeks. Quentin Johnston didn't have a good game. He had a fumble, but they're featuring him in this past game. Most importantly, we saw a Lad McConkey showing in this game. Is this going to be sustainable? I don't know. Is it because the Commanders, I believe, were taking away his his top two options, right? Or taking away Keenan Allen. They were taking away Quentin Johnston. Maybe that led to Lad being featured here. If I was someone who had Lad McConkey right now, I would be like trying to get away as soon as possible, right? This might be the breakout game and it might feature him going forward. I don't want to be the one that finds out, right? Let that be someone else's problem. So if a team is like 5-0, 4-1, see if they're willing to give you a usable piece for Lad McConkey that can help push you right now to through some games, right? You just need bodies to push you through some games right now. And Lad has been super quiet. I expect that they will lean on Johnston and Keenan even more with Omari and Hampton out. It's going to be Kimani Vidal, and I forgot the other running back in that backfield. So again, throw some money against this backfield, see what plays out here. But Omari Hampton is out for 4 weeks. The offensive line is horrible. So I don't know how much you can trust the running back situation going forward. You will have some good days and some questionable days until he gets back. But yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for the Chargers. But yeah, that's the news. He's been one of the bright spots amongst all rookies and for fantasy teams. But yes, Hampton is out for the next 4 weeks. So adjust accordingly. The Patriots, this is the second half of that Bills game on Sunday Night Football. It's been 2 weeks now with big games from Stephon Diggs. He has a competent QB, 10 receptions for 146. He almost had a touchdown. He got tripped up late. I don't see why this doesn't continue. I think you can count on Diggs as a wide receiver one going forward. I think as this offense gains traction, you will have some fluctuations with Hunter Henry is going to have some big games. Stephon Diggs is going to have some big games, maybe Booty here and there, but I think the two guys to really own in this roster in this offense are Hunter Henry and Stephon Diggs. And then, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson continues to hang around, right? He continues to lead his backfield in terms of production. There's been your Trevion Henderson sightings. He scored a touchdown yesterday, but thus far, his production has been abysmal for where we drafted Henderson. So I kept drafting Ramondre because I was just like, the value was too good when I was drafting. 14 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. So he didn't really have the most productive game, but when they get into the goal line, I think they gave him the ball. And then I think the third running back was hurt in this game. I forgot his name again, but there was an injury to one of the running backs in this game. So I think you will have more touches from Henderson going forward, but I don't know, man. Like with the bye weeks coming up and all of the injuries piling up at running back, if you have Ramondre, you are sitting pretty right now. Like drop him in your flex spot, let him give you anywhere between 8 to 12 fantasy points, right? I think you can expect that from him. It's not really anyone else I'll pick up in this backfield is Josh McDaniel offense. I think those guys, like the four guys I mentioned, are the ones to really focus on here. Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs. Maybe there'll be a Keyshawn Booty game as we hit bye weeks here. But how much do you want to trust that, right? But yes, Ramondre continues to hang around. I think we can start Diggs with confidence going forward. I think that production will ebb and flow between he and Hunter Henry, and it'll be matchup specific. The second half of the Seattle Seahawks game, I believe the Bucks won this game on the last second field goal. But oh my God, the story here is Emeka Egbuka. This guy has been nothing short of spectacular. 28 fantasy points on the day. I mean, every time I look up, he was making big plays after big plays, right? Even when Mike Evans gets back, I think he's basically wide receiver one in this offense until further notice. I was also saying this, right? Guys, you guys are drafting Chris Godwin and hoping he will be back and he will be productive. Yeah, I was like, guys, like when Godwin gets back, he still needs to get his footing. He still needs to really like get back to who he was. So I expect Godwin to be a lot more productive, maybe towards the back half of this year. Maybe next year when he's gone through and played through all of that, he trusts his body a little bit more. But again, we didn't see any showing from anyone else but Bukai in this game. We lost Bucky Irvin, I think, last week. So hopefully, is he out on IR? I don't think he's out on IR. So if you have Rashad White, regardless, continue to play Rashad White. He's serviceable. We know that. He's not the most efficient running back there is, but he can fill out the stat sheet from a fantasy standpoint, and that's all we care about. Baker Mayfield was solid again. Kate Otten will have games here and there, but the guys I really expect to be productive in this offense, Ibuka, and then when Mike Evans gets back, he will have the other half of that wide receiver position. Also, there's the wide receiver they drafted last year out of Washington. He's coming back from IR, so there's going to be another mouth to feed. So guys like Sterling Shepard are going to be. Don't go picking up a Sterling Shepard just yet. He was been on IR, so look out for guys like that in this offense. Rashad White, I will continue to play him in my flex spots until further notice. The Titans finally won a game. More like this game was given away to them. Arizona just fell apart late. But again, we saw a Calvin Ridley. I think I buried the lead here, but a Calvin Ridley breakout. Don't expect this going forward. The Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken, they play the Cardinals. Who did the Tennessee Titans play? Yes, they did play Arizona, right? So we saw a big game from Calvin Ridley finally. We've seen these games from Calvin Ridley before. I just don't trust it just yet. I'll have to see. And I know if you are struggling, it's easier for me to sit here and say, don't put him in your lineups when you literally don't have any other options. I had one league where I literally had no one else to play because of bye weeks and injuries. I had to put Ridley in my lineup. I didn't do it because I had options. This one panned out for me, but I don't expect this to be a trend going forward. I expect them maybe as the season progresses, this gets better, but I would say give it a week or two to see how this plays out before you go putting Calvin Ridley in your lineup again, and then he gives you a dud next week. So that is my observation there. Pollard continues to be a one-man wrecking crew. I think as his offense gets more and more efficient, you will see better days from Pollard. Right now, you will take the 13 fantasy points, the 12 fantasy points, the 10 fantasy points, the 15 fantasy points that he's been giving you. You will take all of that. Besides that, go pick up the rookie wide receiver they have here. I think he's number one. Or maybe this is going to be now the new number one in Calvin Ridley. But again, the takeaway here is that don't go rushing in and expecting this from Calvin Ridley every week. I think this was an anomaly for now. The Washington Commanders, a breakout game from the artist formerly known as Bill. JCM here had a terrific game. They were using him in the pass game, 2 for 39. You would take that 111 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. This game just got away from the Chargers. Debo Samuel had a really good game. He had 8 for 96 and a touchdown. It's just a typical Debo Samuel game. He was not used in the rushing game, but yeah, he had a solid game. Jaden Daniels came back, 17 fantasy point in, nothing to sneeze at. He didn't rush too much in this game. I expect better days. And then Luke McCaffrey, right? This is a guy I was really thinking about recommending last week. He's been productive, guys, like a 1 for 50, right? So he had a big play. As we hit bye weeks here and the injuries pile up, if you are in leagues where you need some help at the wide receiver position, you can't go wrong, right? Until Terry McLaurin comes back, he's a guy you can throw in there and see what happens. He might give you the occasional big play. Don't trust it 100%. You're just hoping for upside. You're hoping he catches a bomb and it makes your day, right? But that's it. I wouldn't go spending a lot of money on him if you have to pick him up in your flex. I would just focus on a little bit of money here, a fab here on him, see what happens. Put him on your bench, see what happens. I had leagues where I had no one else to play and I put him there. 5 fantasy points better than 0, right? And we can't be greedy. Let's move on here to the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, this offense is just horrible right now, right? And I don't think it's the QB position. I don't think it's Jake Browning. Jake Browning knows how to play football. But right now, the offensive line just can't stop anyone. They've been facing a lot of really difficult fronts in the past few weeks, and that's really impacted their overall fantasy production and the overall performance of that offense. But in this one, we saw life from all of the key fantasy pieces in this offense, led by Jamal Chase, 26 fantasy points, 6 for 110, 2 touchdowns on the day. Jake Browning, 19 fantasy points. This is the type of performance we expected from these guys when Joe Burrow went down, when I was recommending Jake Browning. Andre Yosivas, another good game here, right? 5 for 82. I think they came back on the Detroit Lions a little bit, and the Lions pulled away late. T. Higgins, right? 9 fantasy points. You would take it, right? I think there was an opportunity to have a bigger day here. It just didn't materialize for T. Higgins. Chase Brown, 8 fantasy points. So given what they've given us in the past few weeks, I'll take this game, right? We had at least something from them. If you were hit by the bye weeks or injuries and you just needed to play these guys, not knowing that anything would pan out, have people trading Jamal Chase for pennies on the dollar, right? But again, maybe perhaps this is a sell high game for Chase. Go and get some value for Chase if you can. Hopefully you get something back for him. I don't know how good this team is going to be from a fantasy standpoint going forward. The offensive line, like I said, is horrible. That is the bigger problem here. I don't think everyone keeps saying QB, QB, QB. I know Jake Browning's look horrible, but I don't think he forgot how to play football, right? I think it's just the offensive line. They can't block anyone, and he's sped up, and that affects how he plays in the rest of the offense. Obviously, play Jamal Chase if you have him. Play Chase Brown if you have him, right? Running back is pretty thin right now. But I would try to be cautious. If you have other options, I will just wait and see what happens in this offense for the next few weeks. Obviously, you have to play Chase, and if you have Higgins and Chase Brown, maybe you are forced to play them, but I wouldn't play anyone else. Okay, guys, let's go on to the Jaguars here. This game just wrapped as I was filming, try to get you the rest of the performances here for this week. Trevor Lawrence had a really good game in this one, 26 fantasy points. That's because he had 2 rushing TDs. That also means that if he had 2 rushing TDs, there was none to go by for the running backs here. Brian Thomas Jr. had 10 fantasy points. Parker Washington continues to factor into this offense. We saw a Travis Hunter sighting. So I think we are starting to see some good things from the wide receiver position in this one for the Jaguars. You would take the 10 points you got from BTJ. I know. This is not why you drafted him. You drafted him for bigger performances than these. But the offense has just been stuck in the mud. And I think guys like Brian Thomas Jr. are struggling. Travis Hunter, we know why, right? He's playing both sides of the ball. And you know how challenging playing one side of the ball can be. And I think that is also affecting his performance here. So I think there are better days from these guys, but if you played them and you got roughly 8 fantasy points or 10 fantasy points, you would take it, right? ETN had a quiet game, but I think he'll be better in subsequent games. The takeaway here is that the Jaguars defense has been leading the way for them. I believe they are going to be 4-1 now. Hey, winning is winning no matter how it comes. They just beat the Chiefs. Our defense has been spectacular this season. I picked them up and then I dropped them because I was like, oh, they're playing the Chiefs. This is going to be a tough game. But they did what they needed to do to get the debut in this one. I think going forward, I will still not trust Hunter. BTJ, you have to play, but Hunter, we have to just sit for now until we figure out what's going on there. I can't put this guy in my lineup, right? Maybe a guy to pick up is Parker Washington because he's just been consistent. He's giving you that 8 to 10 fantasy points every game. You'll take it. And so right now, I think there are worse options than that. Let's go on to the Chiefs here to wrap this one up. Patrick Mahomes continues to be the do it all for this team. 378 yards, 60 yards rushing, and a touchdown. He's the de facto running back for this team. He's making plays happen left and right. We knew that Xavier Worthy wasn't healthy coming into this one. It's good to see that he put up at least 8 fantasy points. Kareem Hunt had a really good game in this one because obviously 2 rushing touchdowns. I'm not sure what's happening with Pacheco, but again, last week Pacheco had a good fantasy game, and this week we're seeing Kareem Hunt. Either you play both of them or you pick who you want to play, but like it's hard to trust these guys, and I know it's hard to say when you have no options for the running back position, so you have to keep rolling with them if that's all you have. There'll be games, good games in there. There'll be bad games in there, but there's really no one to trust in this game beyond Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick is just doing way too much for this team. And that's not sustainable. This is how guys get hurt because they're just running all around trying to make plays and putting themselves in harm's way instead of just sitting back and letting the other guys do some of the work for you. So Patrick is playing superhero right now, as he's always done, but they're asking him to do way too much and they're not winning, right? So I expect that Rishi Rice is coming back after next game. I expect to see some relief in this offense. This offense is built around him. Xavier Worthy should be also healthy. I expect to see a better game from him. Until then, Tyquan Thornton, go and pick him up, put him in your lineups until further notice because Patrick keeps finding this guy. He keeps getting opened. I think you should have him in your lineup. You should have him on your roster if you don't already. Travis Kelce production will come and go. It'll be game dependent. There'll be some good games. There'll be some bad games in there. But the takeaway here is that, hey, I don't know who to trust in that backfield. And if you are really, really desperate, I'll probably go Kareem Hunt over Pacheco because they just seem to trust Kareem Hunt more than Pacheco. There'll be the occasional big games here for both of them. Week in and week out, I would expect a huge fantasy production from these guys, which is strange. I keep saying this. I'm not used to an Andy Reid team that basically cannot run the football. So hopefully they have better days ahead for these guys. But yeah, I think we have 4 teams on bye this week. We expect to get those teams back. I think some of these teams, I don't know how many teams are on a bye this week, but yeah, bye weeks have hit us. And so you got to be prepared. The guys that I mentioned on waiver wire, you should go and pick them up. But yeah, that is really it for this one, guys. Hopefully you find this helpful. As you can see, I started really small here. I'm really working to make sure I can bring this content to you week in and week out. There'll be weeks here where maybe you don't hear from me because I have my regular job, but hopefully you guys are finding the content helpful. I'll keep trying my best to upgrade what you see here. But yeah, it is tough now. So many injuries, a lot of guys on the bye. This is where if you drafted a balanced team, this is where you are reaping the benefits. I mean, there are teams where I lost James Conner, I lost Tyron Tracy, and I lost just so many guys went down, right? I'm still able to get a win because I had like those backups on my roster, right? Guys like Ramondre Stevenson, guys like Rondale Robinson, guys like Quentin Johnston, right? Those are the type of guys I was picking up late in my draft that are now carrying my team. So, as the adage goes, your team that you draft is not going to look the same as the team that takes you to the final or the team that completes the season for you. So, make sure you are working the waiver wires, make sure you are offering trades here and there, see what you can get away with. Fantasy is a live organism. You have to be active, you have to fight, scratch, and claw your way to success. All right, guys, this is it for this week. I'm looking forward to bringing this again to you next week. Go pick up the guys we mentioned on waiver wire and hopefully use this to navigate all of the changes that are happening on your teams. I'll be back with more and I will talk to you soon. Peace out.